A young CIA recruit named Mason is busy charming a waitress when his mentor, Peter, walks in. Peter quickly warns him that personal attachments can be dangerous in their line of work. Someone could use her to get to him. To make his point, he discreetly points out a man photographing them. Mason's smile fades, but Peter simply tells him to get a dog if he's looking for love. Soon after, both men are assigned to protect an ambassador in Montenegro. Peter escorts the ambassador to a safe spot, switching suits with him to act as a decoy. Meanwhile, Mason sets up on a rooftop with his sniper rifle, scanning the crowd and describing possible threats.
I'm in the yellow building, green shutters, left of the clock tower.
How many potentials?
Too many. I don't like it.
He urges Peter to call off the operation, worried they don't have enough backup. Peter ignores the suggestion and continues walking through the crowd, disguised as the ambassador. A man suddenly rises from the crowd, weapon in hand. Peter spots a child nearby and orders Mason not to fire, but the man opens fire, hitting Peter, who's saved by his body armor, and Mason takes the shot. The target is down, but in the chaos, the child is killed, leaving Peter shaken. My name is Sid, and with that start, today, we're gonna recap the 2014 spy action thriller movie, The November Man. Please support my work, and let's continue the story. 5 years pass. In Switzerland, Peter now lives a quiet life away from the CIA. That peace ends when he's informed that someone wants to meet. The visitor turns out to be Hanley, his former boss. Hanley lays out photos of dead operatives, all people Peter once worked with. The killer has been identified, a Russian assassin named Alexa, working for presidential candidate Arkady Fedorov. Fedorov is erasing anyone who can expose his past. At first, Peter says it's not his problem, until Hanley shows him another file. Inside is the face of Natalie, a woman from Peter's past. She's now undercover, deep inside Fedorov's circle, holding evidence that could destroy him. She also knows a name that ties him directly to war crimes in Chechnya. Hanley explains that Natalie has specifically requested Peter to handle her extraction. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Fedorov is addressing the press. While he speaks, Natalie slips into his office and opens his vault. She finds old photographs of a young girl connected to him and quickly takes pictures. She puts everything back in place, just as Fedorov returns, greeting him calmly before leaving the room. But Fedorov spots a small detail, the vault key she forgot inside. When he opens it, he knows someone has broken in. By then, Natalie is already on her way to the extraction point, the CIA tracking her movements. At the US Embassy in Belgrade, Hanley coordinates the operation, with Mason positioned in the extraction team. A video call comes through from Station Chief Weinstein, warning that multiple agencies are after the same information Natalie carries. Natalie's cover doesn't last long. The FSB spots her and gives chase through the streets. She abandons her car, running for her life, when Peter suddenly pulls up and tells her to get in. He speeds away, though she's clearly surprised to see him, and even more so when she realizes the CIA has no idea he's involved. Hanley never told them. In the car, Natalie quietly asks about their daughter, Lucy. Meanwhile, at CIA headquarters, Weinstein gives the order to eliminate her, worried her intel could fall into the wrong hands. Peter asks for the name linked to Fedorov's secrets. She tells him,
Mira Filipova.
And Peter passes the name to Hanley. On a nearby rooftop, Mason lines up his shot. One pull of the trigger, and Natalie collapses. Before her last breath, she presses a phone into Peter's hand. Peter's fury is instant. As the CIA team drives off, he intercepts them, killing the driver and 2 agents. Mason survives, and soon they're facing each other with guns drawn, but neither fires. They step away, Mason detonates the van, and the standoff ends. Peter hails a taxi, scrolling through the photos on Natalie's phone. He pulls out the memory card, keeps it, and tosses the phone out the window. At his home, Hanley is digging through records, searching for Mira Filipova, the name Peter passed to him. Suddenly, a CIA strike team storms in. Hanley quickly smashes his computer, making sure they can't access whatever he found. Across town, Mason is back at his apartment. Spotting his neighbor's cat wandering inside, he carries it back to his hot chick neighbor, who invites him in for coffee. Then his phone rings. It's a private call, and he excuses himself, claiming it's work. Meanwhile, at a refugee center in Belgrade, a woman named Alice is approached by New York Times journalist Simpson. He's chasing a story on Fedorov, determined to expose him. Alice warns that it's dangerous territory and makes it clear she wants no political involvement. At Belgrade Airport, Alexa arrives and checks into a hotel. In her room, she lays out her weapons and shows off her athletic skills. Back at CIA operations, Mason sits in front of Weinstein, who demands to know why he didn't shoot Peter after Peter killed the rest of the team. Mason explains he never felt Peter was a threat. Weinstein points out the odd part: Peter didn't shoot him either. In a quieter conversation, Weinstein shows Mason files on Peter's past, including his relationship with Natalie. Mason realizes Peter is likely to avenge her death. Weinstein makes it simple. The order is to execute Peter. Mason says he has no problem with that. At Hanley's apartment, Peter finds two CIA agents searching for the missing drive. He takes them both down in seconds. Elsewhere, Alexa visits a web cafe to meet a hacker. He digs up information on Mira and points out a connection to Alice, even providing her address. Meanwhile, Mason and the CIA track Peter's movements. Inside Hanley's apartment, Peter uses the team's phone to pose as CIA tech support, requesting Alice's phone number and address. But Mason senses something's wrong. He asks Celia to call the other officer who was supposed to be there. When Peter doesn't answer, Mason realizes exactly where he is. Peter follows Alice to a cafe where she's meeting Simpson. Alexa is already there, disguised as a waitress. Peter calls Alice, warning her that Alexa is an assassin. The moment Alexa reaches for a knife, Peter tells her to run. Seconds later, Mason's team storms in and the chase begins. Peter grabs Alice and pulls her through the kitchen. Mason tries tracking Peter's location using a phone scanner, but Peter taunts him, saying 6 agents won't be enough to catch him. Alice demands to know what's going on, but Peter simply tells her to trust him if she wants to stay alive. She pretends to be alone, drawing one agent close, and Peter knocks him out, sabotages his phone, and slips away. The CIA soon finds their injured teammate, and Mason receives another call from Peter. They trace it, only to realize it's coming from their own agent's phone. With the hunt still on, Peter keeps needling Mason over their shared past. He and Alice reach a parking lot where Peter smashes a car window, triggers the alarm, and pulls the fuel line. When Mason arrives, he spots the leaking gas. But by then, Peter and Alice are already in a different car. As Mason closes in, Peter fires at the fuel, igniting an explosion and giving them the cover they need to escape. On the move, Peter presses Alice for Mira Filipova's location. She says she doesn't know. He warns that if others can't find Mira, they'll come after Alice instead. Alice shows him a file on Mira. Peter flips through it and keeps asking for a lead. She still denies knowing where Mira is. In the stack of photos, he spots a familiar face, a pimp Alice recognizes. Peter names him Denisov, one of Fedorov's men from the Chechen War. They find Denisov at his strip club. Peter tells him Fedorov is quietly erasing anyone who remembers his crimes. Denisov explains the motive: Chechnya's oil. He also reveals something worse. A Russian army building was blown up just before the war, which triggered the conflict. The bombing, Denisov says, was a setup ordered by Fedorov with CIA involvement. Peter is stunned. At a CIA black site, Celia tries to question Hanley about his ties to Peter, but Hanley stonewalls her.
Show me your tits.
Excuse me? Fuck you.
You like being on top, working your way up the ladder?
Back at headquarters, Weinstein gives Mason a flash drive containing Peter's notes. At home, Mason loads it and finds photos of Peter with Natalie, plus a report where Peter calls Mason reckless and recommends he be dropped from the field. Mason's anger boils over. Later, he returns the neighbor's cat and finally meets her properly. Her name is Sarah. Peter and Alice pick up burner phones, then head down the street talking about Mira's safety. They check into an apartment, and Peter pours himself a drink before stepping to the window. Across the way, he spots Sarah leaving with Mason in a taxi. Mason has decided to loosen up and live a little, taking Sarah to a club. Meanwhile, in the apartment, Alice accidentally drops a word in Russian while playing piano.
Sati.
Моя любимая.
What did you say?
It catches Peter's attention. She explains that her parents were university professors who taught her the language. Later that night, Mason and Sarah return from their night out, closer than ever. Peter, now dressed to move, tells Alice she can't stay with him anymore. He hands her cash and a phone, instructing her to hide somewhere safe. When Mason wakes, Sarah is gone. A text from her phone comes in. He rushes to check his weapons, but they're missing. In the kitchen, he finds Peter holding a gun to Sarah's head. Mason tries to defuse the situation, but Peter plays mind games, suggesting Mason isn't sure if she's worth saving. He forces Sarah to ask Mason herself. Mason hesitates, and Peter pounces on the doubt. Mason finally shouts that yes, she is worth saving. Peter says it's time for Mason's final lesson: never caring about the people you kill on duty. Mason insists he had no choice when he killed Natalie in Moscow. Peter, holding a knife to Sarah's throat, drops his gun. Mason reaches for it and orders him to let her go. Instead, Peter stages one last test of Mason's character. Mason yells at him to stop, but Peter slashes Sarah's femoral artery and walks out. Mason's choice is immediate. He works to stop the bleeding, applying pressure until the ambulance arrives. She is taken away, alive but badly hurt. Fedorov arrives for a conference, but meets privately with Alexa first, giving her instructions. Later, when Simpson returns home, he runs into Alice, who is now ready to tell him everything about Fedorov. She explains about Mira Filipova, but when Simpson goes to fetch his recorder, Alexa emerges from hiding and stabs him. She moves to finish Alice as well, but Simpson holds her off long enough for Alice to escape into the street. Meanwhile, Mason studies Peter's old photographs and makes a new discovery. Peter and Natalie had a daughter, something the CIA never knew. At the CIA black site, Peter confronts Hanley, demanding to know why he was called back if Natalie didn't request it. Hanley explains that Natalie had an eyewitness to the Chechnya War, someone who saw the staged building bombing carried out with CIA involvement. Hanley reveals it was Weinstein who worked with Fedorov and who gave the order to execute Natalie. When Hanley mentions Mira Filipova's background, her parents were professors who taught her Russian, Peter realizes the truth. Alice is Mira Filipova. Back at the office, Mason tells Weinstein that Peter has a daughter and shows him the photos of Peter and Lucy. The CIA begins running a facial recognition match on Alice. Mira, now disguised as a prostitute, makes her way toward Fedorov's hotel room. On her way to the room, Peter calls her, telling her he knows her real identity and warning her not to confront Fedorov. She ignores the warning and continues.
Who are you?
I'm the gift from Semyon Denisov.
What's this for? Okay, upstairs.
Inside the hotel, Mira meets Fedorov and slips into the bathroom and remembers the night Fedorov murdered her family, sparing her only because he believed she was deaf. At the same time, the CIA confirms Alice's true identity. The real Alice died 4 years earlier. Mira shatters a mirror in the hotel bathroom, shaping a shard into a makeshift knife. Stepping out, she seduces him a bit and presses the blade to his throat. He remembers her, the girl he kept as a sex slave for 2 years, and taunts that if she truly meant to kill him, she'd have done it already. His words make her hesitate, giving him the chance to flip the fight and pin her to the bed, his voice dripping with the same cruelty as years before. Peter fights through the hotel guards and bursts into the room. He tells Mira to grab a phone. They're going to make Fedorov confess. Peter wants names, including who in the CIA was working with him. When Fedorov stalls, Peter spins a revolver cylinder and starts a deadly game of Russian roulette. The tension cracks. Fedorov blurts out that it was Hanley, not Weinstein, who conspired with him. Shocked, Peter shows him a photograph. Mira studies it and confirms Hanley's face. Outside, gunfire erupts as CIA agents close in. Peter slips Mira an access card, telling her to get clear, and draws their attention. Mason joins the chase, tracking Peter into the basement. The two fight hard until Peter gains the upper hand, strangling Mason just enough to leave him dazed. He drops Mira's phone beside him and vanishes. Later, Fedorov's recorded confession is played at the station. Mason heads to Weinstein's office with the evidence, only to find Hanley waiting. Calmly, Hanley tells him to sit. Meanwhile, Peter meets Mira at the hotel, advising her to disappear. They speak briefly about their lives. He admits he's retired from the agency, now running private businesses. Then he calls his daughter's phone, and Hanley answers. Hanley has Lucy. If Peter wants her alive, he'll bring Mira. Hanley also reveals it was Mason who delivered Lucy to him.
If you hurt her, I'll kill you.
Peter tells Mira to head to the station and book 3 tickets for their escape. While she does, he goes to confront Hanley. Hanley lays out his plan. With Fedorov under his control, they'd control Russia. Once Fedorov became president, he'd be pushed into NATO, giving them leverage to strike the Middle East. A common, easy enemy, as Hanley calls it. At the railway station, Mira sits in a cafe, working on an article exposing Fedorov. But Alexa has tracked her.
Thank you.
Peter misleads Hanley, claiming Mira is at a bus station. Hanley sends Mason and a team to grab her. Mason, now aware of Hanley's corruption, quietly jams his partner's seatbelt and crashes into a wall, killing him instantly, then heads to rescue Lucy instead. Back at the cafe, Mira spots Alexa. She bolts, with Alexa in pursuit. Outside, Alexa draws her gun, but Mira snatches up a shovel, striking her hard and sending her tumbling down the stairs. Sees Alexa is no longer a threat and walks away to finish what she started. Celia locates the kidnappers and relays the intel to Mason. He storms in and rescues Lucy. Then, Mason returns to Hanley's location, taking down his men. Peter steps in, holding Hanley at gunpoint. But instead of pulling the trigger, he spares him, thanking Mason before leaving with Lucy. Mira completes her article and sends it to the New York Times under Simpson's name, then joins Peter and Lucy at the station. Later, Mira testifies before the International Criminal Court, recounting her family's murder by Fedorov and revealing his conspiracy with Hanley to bomb the building that ignited the Second Chechen War. The revelations flood the news, shattering Fedorov's presidential ambitions. In the final scene, Fedorov, having publicly denied all charges, relaxes on a yacht with women, believing he's untouchable. A single shot cracks the air. An unseen sniper ends him instantly. Well, that's the end of this story. How did you like this recap? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.